all kinds of records. Look at this. Most wins by an expansion teams with 17. They were the first expansion team to win the first 5 matches of the season. But what are they going to do in year 2? It's going to be a tough act to follow. I sat down with MLS Goalkeeper of the Year, Roman Bürki, ahead of the 2024 season. Here it is.
Congratulations on a pretty remarkable first season in MLS. I know it didn't end the way that you guys wanted to, but when you think about what St. Louis has achieved in year 1, what would you say you're the most proud of?
I would say the whole effort we put in, during the whole season. Obviously, we were a little bit unexperienced. Then when it comes to the end in the playoff, but the effort and the work we put in throughout the whole season is one thing we can be really proud of.
I think you were a team that sort of defied expectations the entire way, like from a media perspective. I think there was a lot of people that well, just wait, it's gonna, they're gonna fall off the peak at some point. And it just never happened in the regular season. You guys were consistently at the top. And now, rather than kind of being this underdog, I feel like, St. Louis has already established itself as a team to beat. How does that change the approach to the start of a season when you go from being sort of the underdogs to now the ones with sort of a target on your back?
Yeah, we had to adjust already during last season, we knew that once we were in first place in the Western Conference that we are the guys, the team that is chased, everyone wanted to be, or a lot of teams wanted to be on our position. And so we tried to adjust, we tried to present us in the games as a leader, as the number 1 in the Western. And I would say almost throughout the whole regular season, we did a really good job. But towards the end, we lost a few games, and I would say that was then a little bit like we had no energy anymore. Maybe we invested too much into that regular season and we didn't really think about the playoffs. We knew we were going to make the playoffs, but everyone was talking about records we can break. We can still break this record. We can be the first. We can win the Western. And then we put so much effort and energy into these goals that I would say towards the end of the regular season and then the playoffs, we're just not that fresh anymore.
It's really interesting what he had to say at the end of that interview, talking about kind of the end of the season and sort of that late season, I don't want to say collapse that they had, because they did win the Western Conference, but the early exit in the playoffs, and maybe they were tired. Maybe they put too much energy into the regular season. So, Charlie, last season when we talked about St. Louis, we talked about all the things that they did right, especially leading up to this season. Just from the front office, the roster build, Bradley Carnell as the coach. When you look at what they accomplished in year 1, what do you think is the biggest factor contributing to the success that they had? And is there a danger that, it was almost like expectations are now set too high?
No, I think Bradley Carnell did an incredible job at establishing an identity and getting them to play to their max potential with the press, the high press, the intensity, and the counter press. They were very difficult to play against because they swarmed you. And then João Klaus damn near finished every chance he had. He was that good. And then when you saw him get injured, we thought, okay, this is it. They caught lightning in a bottle, and it was gonna be done. But the style of play carried them through, missing a massive part of their team. And at the end of the season, João Klaus got back. He scored 5 goals in the last 7 matches, so he still caught fire. But I think individually, defensively, is where they struggled. The 1v1 breakdown, if they ever got isolated, you felt like this is when they were going to give up opportunities, and that's when teams capitalized on them. Whether they were forced to break down opponents, as teams would sit down and say, okay, break us down, and then we're now going to counter you. And you start to see teams trying to figure out how to break down St. Louis. And in the end, I think it started to work against them because they had the target on their back, and now teams were changing the way they played.
Do you think that was a contributing factor, that they were just gassed at the end of the season?
Maybe a little. Towards the middle of the season, I would have said that. But at the end of the year, no, I don't think being tired because you're chasing the glory of winning MLS Cup. You're chasing history, and they had an incredible season. I don't think fatigue played a role in their downfall in the end. I think Sporting Kansas City caught heat at the right time. It's a rivalry. They understood how to come together and defend and play to their strengths, and St. Louis got stretched a little bit, and Peter Vermees with the experience, Bradley Carnell, I think it was a very important year for Bradley Carnell, not only to just establish the team and the identity and the crowd and get everyone on the same page, but I think you learned a lot about individuals, you learned a lot about the team and the league, being the head coach for a full season for St. Louis, and now this is the year.
To follow up,
this is the tough
what
year.
you're saying, that next act that St. Louis is going to have to put together. Now there are expectations. They surpassed. Not only did they surpass, they shattered any expectations that we had of them. And again, credit to Bradley Carnell. It was an incredible job, not only to Bradley Carnell, to the institution and the franchise as a whole. How to come in prepared. They dotted all their I's, they crossed all their T's going into the season. And I think the end product on the field, it all trickled down from an institution that was built with the right pillars, and they had an incredible season. Now the expectations are set. And by the way, I want to give you credit for that Roman Bürki interview, because it was not on our slated interviews. And you were kind of just like in a room that we got. Suze was kind of just like chilling in the darkness. And it's like, Suze, Roman Bürki is coming into the room.
A light came on.
And Suze just...
Okay.
That's exactly.
I sat down, no prep, and it was a great interview because you are MLS guru.
Was that your stormtrooper walk?
No, Stormtrooper's a little bit more rigid. She walked in with so much grace. So much grace.
Out there like,
Sweating it all. That's sweet. Thank you, Nico.
MLS guru, number one.
Oh, I love this league. Let's take a look at the projected 11 for St. Louis City heading into this season. Jacques Claus up there, 10 goals for them last season. He spent a lot of time being injured as well, but you saw the production that they had from him while he was on the pitch. The big loss for me, Charlie, is Gioacchini, who also scored 10 goals for them. They were their two top goal scorers. So where does that production come from, and how do you see this being, I don't know, just a good way for them to make up for that offensive production?
Yeah, I think, again, João Klaus has to be healthy for the full season. I think Bradley Carnell has to make sure that, no muscular injuries come up for João Klaus, because he is going to be central. He's such a gifted goal scorer. And then you're talking about ways that they influenced the game last year, whether it's off of set pieces, whether it's off the press. Everyone has to contribute. And Leuven was fantastic off his set piece deliveries. Out of midfield, this is a team that is in sync with one another. They know their strengths, and they're going to have to take it up a whole nother notch, because teams are knowing what to expect when you go up against St. Louis.
So for St. Louis, what do you think is success for them in year two? Because they've won the Western Conference, is it getting to the playoffs? Is it winning playoff games? Is it getting to a conference final? What do you think their measuring stick is, Christine?
I think it's more challenging now, because statistically it's more challenging to replicate what you've already done. I think that a lot of their success this season came from the fact that they weren't focused on winning. They were focused on defining their system, choosing the right players, cultivating the proper culture. They had such a consistent fan following, which also contributed. They came up with beautiful tifos, which I think their average attendance for matches over was somewhere in the around 25K. I think they did everything right, and that all led to their success, including obviously their coach. As a first-time coach, I think getting all of that nailed down was what created the wins, not necessarily focusing on the wins. Now I think that pivot changes the way you perceive how you're playing, because now you know what you have. You have a package, you have an identity, you have a style of play. How do you improve upon what you have? And I think that it's going to be more of the team gelling together. and probably a little bit more depth, because I think that just figuring out what you need when you need it and dividing your play up now going forward will be more of a challenge for them.
And Bradley Carnell, you got to have like a bulletin board in the locker room, because a lot of it's psychology with this group, and managing any team, have them chase something, be better than you were last year. So the ultimate goal is to win a playoff game and keep going. So you got to top last season.